to all of you for joining us today. And I want to just, as Craig said, I'm the Vice President for Programs for AAMG. I'm also the Director of the Neuberger Museum of Art at Purchase College. And I just wanted to give you an update on the June conference. So as some of you know, we were going to be having the conference at Kansas University in June, but obviously things have changed a little. So we are reinventing the program and going remote. The conference committee has been working very hard on this over the last couple of weeks, and we're continuing to fine-tune some things. We've had wonderful, wonderful support from our panelists, our keynote, all mostly willing to continue along with us and produce their content remotely. What we are looking at doing is a conference that would go across 2 weeks in June. It would be truncated during the day to accommodate folks both on the East Coast and on the West Coast. And we're working out the details for the sessions and the timing of things, and also registration for the conference. So we're excited about it. I hope you all will join us then for the conference. We'll be sending out updates and more information as soon as we have it.
Thanks so much, Tracy, for sharing those details on the conference. It's like so many things, we're taking it day by day and trying to come up with the best platform, the best delivery method for all of our presenters who submitted this year. And we're confident that we can still deliver a robust conference session. One thing I wanted to do before we started quickly here is just ask a simple poll question, and I'll put that up on your screen right now. So we hosted a session, I think this was about a week ago. I'm just curious to know how many of you attended if you went to the previous session. So we'll see here. We've got about half the number of attendees today over what we had a week ago. That's not too surprising given that this is a pretty narrow topic, and last week's topic was just simply about college university museums in general. So thanks to all of you who are responding. It looks like about 20 to 25% of you did attend our last session, so thanks for those of you who did come. And of course, for the rest of you, this is a new session, so we very much appreciate you being here and checking us out. So I'll go ahead and introduce our panelists so we can get started here. I've introduced myself already. But with us today, we've got Alexandra Chamberlain. She's the gallery director and instructor at Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, and is also our vice president of communications for AAMG. So she sends you all those emails and listserv announcements to keep you up to date. We also have Gabriel Harrison with us. He's the galleries and exhibitions manager at Stanford University. And has lots to share with us today about how they're navigating virtual exhibitions and so forth with student shows. And finally, we have Jamaal Sheats, and he's director and curator of the Fisk University Galleries and assistant professor. And he also serves as an at-large board member for us for student engagement. So with that, I'm going to mute my microphone and hand this over to Alexandra, and she'll speak a little bit about the way in which they are responding to student exhibitions at ISU.
Great. Thank you, Craig. Can everybody, hopefully everybody can hear me and see me. This is all new technology, I'm sure, for most of us, and we're trying to figure it out as quickly as we can, as I'm sure all of you are as well. I'm seeing on the chat that one of the biggest questions is whether this will be recorded and you can access it later. That is true. That is our plan. We are recording it. It is my plan to get it up on our website as quickly as I can, either this evening or tomorrow, depending on how quickly we can actually receive the recording, so please be aware of that. As you have questions, please be sure to use the chat function here. We're trying to monitor that as best we can as well. And I know one of the first things that I wanted to do was ask a poll, which it's up on my page. I'm hoping it's up on all of your pages. Craig, have you launched that poll, or maybe I launch it? I think I launch it. Launch poll. Okay, there we go. I think it just popped up on your screens, hopefully. But my biggest question to get started, what I'm finding is an issue with our institution is just the sheer fact of security issues and using outside platforms for our online content now that we have to move our exhibitions online. So the biggest question I wanted to ask you guys was, how many of you have already started working with your IT department or reached out to them or not? And I'm seeing that just around 50% or so are not working with campus IT at all. And about 25% of you haven't even considered it yet. So the first thing I'm going to say here is try to talk with your IT departments as quickly as possible, because as you're going to see, what I've found out after doing a whole bunch of research is that essentially I can't use any of it just because of how we're set up at Indiana State University. Thank you for that. So I'll go into what we are doing. So just a little bit of background to manage this. Okay, so, oh, this poll thing keeps popping up, sorry. Okay, so at Indiana State University, we're in Terre Haute, Indiana. The university is somewhat sizable. We're between 12 and 14,000 students, I believe. I just started here in August. And it's been a very steep learning curve for me. Every semester, the University Art Gallery, that's our main space, which you can see in those images there, we host at the end of the semester an MFA thesis exhibition, which is typically between 3 and 10 students. And then after that is the BFA BA senior exhibition, which is anywhere from 10 to 25 students. This semester, I have 20 students who are set to graduate in either or with either a BFA or a BA degree. All of those need to exhibit somehow in some capacity. So that's what we're working towards. In terms of this semester, I had the MFA exhibition installed prior to us moving to online formatting. So I'm really happy about that. However, the BFA BA senior exhibition has to move completely online. I have no other options. I'm not allowed to install in the gallery at all. What you're seeing in those images right now is what is currently sitting in the gallery on the walls. That is the MFA exhibition. Again, there were 3 students in there. You're seeing 2 of them right now with those images. Staffing for our setup, it's me. I'm the gallery director and instructor. I'm faculty status. I teach 2 full semester courses that now are online working from home with my 2 courses. I report to the chair of the Department of Art and Design, which may be a little bit different than some of you out there. And I have a faculty status, but I'm non-tenure track as of right now. I just hired a gallery assistant. By just, I mean 2 weeks ago she started. Thankfully, she has been approved to work from home, and I can give her up to 15 hours a week, but that is it. She is staff status. And then I typically have anywhere between 3 to 5 student workers, all of which were required to leave campus, and I wasn't given the option to even have them work from home. Even if I was given the option to have them work from home, because we're so small, I wouldn't even have the capability to give them things to do right now. We just don't have the setup necessary. A lot of the work I've been trying to do in this last 6 months has been just establishing policy and procedure to move forward with, as a lot of that hasn't been established before or updated, really. Craig, we can go to the next slide. Awesome. So I thought I would explain, oh, go back. Yep. I thought I would explain a timeline that I'm sure is very similar to many of the timelines we're all working with. On March 12th, President Curtis, as president of our university, she announced that we will begin online instruction beginning March 16th. Spring break was the next week, which is what we're on currently. And then we'll have 2 more weeks of online instruction only following spring break. So on March 13th, I was directed by the chair of the department that our exhibitions, including the BFA BA exhibition, would still be taking place. However, opening receptions were canceled for the remainder of the semester. Okay, great, I can work with that. On March 16th, keep in mind this is just 4 days later, President Curtis announced that online instruction will extend for the rest of the semester and residence halls will close at noon that Saturday, which was March 21st. And they announced that they were canceling their spring commencement ceremony. However, the biggest notice that we've been receiving, that I'm sure you all are as well, is that the university is still open. We are not to say we are closed in any capacity. We are definitely still open, just nobody can really be there. So then on March 17th, I was told by the chair that all campus events and ceremonies, including commencement performances, exhibitions, and their openings, honors night, etc., have now been canceled. So now I'm without even the option of mounting the BFA BA show. I have to figure out some other way to get these students what they need. On March 18th, I asked our gallery assistant to start researching best platforms and strategies to host an online exhibition of sorts. I want to keep in mind here that many of our students, we have a deep concern, as I'm sure many of you do as well, that a lot of them, once they're off campus, they don't have access to internet. They don't have ways of even taking images of their work, let alone actually producing any new work during this time. So we're working with a lot of new constraints. I'm trying to figure out best methods possible, also understanding that at the end of the day, I have to run everything past the full faculty before any decision is actually made, because they're the ones who oversee and advise the students. I'm just the one who kind of puts the show up for them. We can go to the next slide. March 18th through March 25th, my gallery assistant and myself, we've been following all the online conversations, creating our own list of best options, new platforms to use. I want to make it clear that I have a budget to spend. I have a budget that I'm required to spend by the end of the fiscal year. Unfortunately, I have been told now that I can't use any of that money for any platforms outside of our website. That happened on Wednesday. So just 2 days ago, I reached out to our finance admin assistant, who I have to go through to make any purchases whatsoever. And I asked about the possibility of purchasing a website domain like Squarespace, or purchasing access to another online platform that has created or popped up in this time of need for a lot of us. Whether it cost money or it was free, and I received like a full stop notice where any online presence must be on the university website and servers. That includes anything that I would try to set up for this BFA BA exhibition content. And so I had assumed that I wouldn't really be given headway to actually create a whole new website. However, I didn't think that I would be kept from even trying out other platforms, even if they were free of charge. And now I've been told that I can't even try out other platforms, even though they're free of charge, because it's a security issue with OIT, which is our tech team. So my only option now is to use our website, Indiana State University website, which we use Drupal, which is all new to me as well, with a plugin for YouTube for the animated and video content that many of our students also presents at the end of their 4 years with us. This, I was just told really like maybe 24, 48 hours ago that I have no other options. That's what I have to work with because of primarily security issues. So what I strongly suggest is to, if you haven't already, reach out to your tech teams at your universities, because that may severely limit your options of what you're even trying to plan with these online exhibition contents. Essentially what we're going to do now is I'm going to send out ideas and how to take best photographs with our have our students take proper photographs of the works that they do have access to, which is not that many. And they'll have to send me images and written content that I and our gallery assistant will then upload to our Drupal website. And we can access a YouTube plugin for video and animated content. I think that's mainly, yeah, that's what I have, unfortunately. I know it's not as exciting as I'd like it to be. But yeah. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Gabriel who's at Stanford University, and see what his gallery and team has come up with in terms of moving stuff online.
Okay, hello. I think we're in a slightly better position than Alex is at this point, because we had already had a small online design program called SketchUp that we had been using internally. And so I'll get back to that in a minute, but I think that puts us a little bit ahead of where some of the other smaller galleries are. So the Stanford Art Gallery and the Coulter Art Gallery are run by the Department of Art History at Stanford, along with some smaller galleries that we do student work in, smaller students gallery shows. So on March 7th, the Anderson Collection and the Cantor Arts Center, which are independent museums on the campus, but that we connect closely with, notified us that they were going to close. And at that point, then we realized, okay, we need to close as well. And we just started to shut down and figure out what to do. And the first thing that our events and communications manager did was take the two existing exhibitions that we had in the galleries and put them online, just so at least people knew what was there at what point, and that they were closed, but they could still take a look. Okay, next slide. Guess I can do that. Craig, could you, or do I? Can you move it to the next slide? Let's see. Yeah, okay, thank you. So anyway, then March 15th, it's still winter quarter, and it really begins to dawn on us that we're in this for the long haul. So we say, okay, what can we do in the exhibition department, which consists of a preparator and myself? What can we begin to do about the exhibition cycle for the spring? So typically we install the honors exhibition, then the seniors exhibition in the Coulter Art Gallery, and then we install the MFA thesis exhibition in the Stanford Art Gallery. And then of course we do the smaller exhibitions in our smaller galleries. So reaching out to a preparator, he does a deep dive and he starts to look at what people are doing around and how they're actually presenting themselves online. So basically it broke down into two different kinds of online presences, and I think you're all familiar with them. The first one are online images of working galleries and discrete works that are placed on institutional websites, just like Alexandra was talking about, as well as pushed out through Instagram and social media. Individual artists are very active in that. And one of the things that you can see, and I have it down under on the bottom of this slide, are independent online galleries are starting to pop up. The Social Distance Gallery, for example, and that's really important. The second thing is that we all see them. They're virtual tours through gallery spaces. And those really are appropriate for larger collections, museums and institutions with larger resources, but that they typically are at a high cost that we really couldn't bear. Next slide, please. Craig, if you can move it. Okay, thanks. So that takes us sort of to spring break. And our goal from the beginning in thinking about this was, how do we replicate as best as we can the curatorial experience that we usually provide in these galleries? In other words, the process of physically looking at their work, moving around in a space, and then beginning to see the dialogue between their work and the other works in the gallery and in the space. We already use SketchUp as a design tool, and that way we were already sort of using it to loosely organize the work or to supplement the curating with the students in the space. But our existing models are really basic, and we only use them when we needed to use them. Otherwise, we did it in the traditional way, where we brought all the work into the gallery and then dispersed them and then began the curatorial process with the students. So we started to look at what was possible, and we kept coming back to SketchUp, one, because we were familiar with it, and two, because it's a free program. So we figured the students would have access to it in an easy way. One of the things that SketchUp doesn't do well is it doesn't embed videos into models, and I'll talk about that in a second. But if anyone has any insight into how that can be done, that would be appreciated. We can do that offline later. So through trial and error, we found out that we could actually hold a virtual meeting using Zoom, much like we're doing now, and then involve the students in that. And so the students could actually see us move around the works in real time in a model of the gallery space. And in that way, we begin to engage them in this curatorial process. So what was missing online in the sort of the static images of fixed in place work wouldn't be the case with us, we hoped. And we also realized with a bit of research that we could create a simple walkthrough, lock it, place it on our website with a reader so that anybody could take a little virtual walkthrough through these things. And so that's what we're working on right now. Next slide. So basically in the spring quarter, as I said, we're going to take our existing models that we use in design and layout, and I'll show you in a second. I'll give you a little example of it. As you see on the left image, that's a model from a previous MFA show from 2 or 3 years ago. And it shows how we begin to think about putting pieces in space and design them with the students and move them around together collectively. And on the right, you'll see an image from the Cessnon Gallery, which is a gallery next to us at UC Santa Cruz. And they actually paid for and built a little model, but that's sort of the level that we're looking to get to that we can walk through. So our events and communications manager is working on website upgrades to see from both an aesthetic and a functional point of view how we can work together to get this online. And then the second thing is just kind of a status of where we are. And that is that our MFA thesis exhibition looks like we'll have to move it to the fall quarter and still be realized in a physical sense because most of the work is done. And our current plan is to combine the honors and the senior exhibition into a single spring show that we put online in the Coulter Gallery and curate them in the way we're about to talk about. And of course, the biggest challenge that all of you will face if you're doing it in this manner is how to take photos of 3D works and put them into the model, because essentially the preparator and I are going to have to build these models, take images, drape them on them, and then put them back into the model to get them to be realistic. So I'm just going to switch for a moment to my screen just to show you for a second, if I can now, to show you. So this is like a typical model of a gallery. And just to show you what it is. So basically, we build with the students these little models, and we can put them in the space, move them around, and see what they're like. But again, as I say, we use them as a spatial tool, not really an exhibition tool or a sort of like a visual tool after the fact, because we have the gallery. So we haven't developed them. And then I want to show you really quickly the Cessnon Gallery model. And I just got a note from Shelby, who's a curator. Hi, Shelby. Thank you. I'm glad that you can see this is being used. So anyway, this is kind of a walkthrough, and you can see that, you know, you can begin to come up. And our goal is to get to this level with a little bit of lighting, some wall color, flooring, and put the artwork in so that students can see what we're doing as we move things around the walls and curate the physical space. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go back and let's see. Give it back to you guys. Can you guys see where we are, Craig? Did I get rid of the, how do I do this? I'm trying to stop sharing the screen.
I have to share my screen again.
Okay, thank you.
Here. I'll get it.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah. There we go. The
Great.
PowerPoint should be back up.
Great, okay, you can move on to the next.
Jamaal, your mic is muted. Can you unmute that?
Yep, I got you covered. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Gabriel. I truly learned a lot. We're all going through the same thing, and there's no rule book for this. I'm going to start just giving an overview of Fisk University. We're a small school. We roughly have about 960 students. We have an amazing collection on campus, and we have a gallery that we see about 10,000 visitors a year. This week, we would be installing our student exhibition, followed by our senior show. But as you know, like much of you all, we're all closed. And so with that, we're kind of asking ourselves these questions one is, how are we going to keep our community engaged? How are we going to keep our students engaged? And so what we started to do, and we're in the infancy of these conversations because our students had less than 24 hours to vacate the campus. And so we're now essentially 1 week out. And so like Alexandria and like Gabriel, we've been looking at different platforms for our students. So one, of course, is Zoom. We're looking at Zoom, but we're also looking at another software that the library uses to create these online exhibitions called Omeka. And so that's something that we're planning to use. Somebody had asked earlier how many students. We have 900 students, but out of that, we have 11 graduating art majors. And the student show was not just open to our art students. The student show, we have a group of student curators that create the show title, which this year it's a 90s exhibition. And then they also solicit artwork through the student body, and they curate the show. And so with that, we're hoping to use Omeka and also Zoom to kind of create these OMEKA. And I will send a link when we finish up with my portion of the talk. I'll send a link to do that. The other thing that we're looking at that we're also using Zoom for with our exhibitions is that we have partners with us in partner exhibitions. And so what we plan to do, we had a whole host of public talks that we had planned on kicking off next week. Now we're going to do these Zoom lectures. And so in the coming weeks, we are changing the way that we operate, and hopefully we'll get to a broader audience and we'll be able to keep our students engaged. I think I jumped around a little bit, but I think we can open it up and ask questions and we can go from there.
Okay.
Sure. So I guess presenters, if you can all turn your cameras back on here and we can do some Q&A. What I thought I would do, because we shared that survey earlier in the week, and many of you completed that, about half of you, so thank you. What I thought I'd do first is start by asking some questions based on what we saw in the responses from the survey, and then we'll spend some time with our presenters addressing some of your open questions. So if you have other things that you'd like to ask, go ahead and send those questions in, and we'll save some time at the end to try to address as many of those as we can. For our panelists, the first thing I thought about is, are there other tools that we can teach our students at this point? If they've only got 4 or 5 weeks left with us, are there tools, skill sets, things we can give them that will both build and enhance their portfolios, but also maybe their resume as they think about what lies ahead?
Well, I would just jump in really quickly with that one and just say that there are a million online YouTube videos and things that talk about this, but I think this is a great opportunity for the students to start to build an online presence, because at the moment that they decide to become professional artists, they're going to need that. So this is really a great time for them to launch a little website, which is not that hard to do, create a business card, create a business persona for themselves. And then I included that social distancing social media platform just to say that this is the time to start sending out on Instagram, on all the social media platforms that the students tend to be on right now. And that's a great way to start.
Could you also, Gabriel, there's Gerald Ross asked us, how many students are virtually exhibiting at Stanford right now?
So at the moment, there are only 5 students, and they are in online on our website, and then there's a faculty show, and I showed those in the first 2 slides. But for the spring, we have 24 seniors that we're going to be displaying this way, the artwork from.
Wow, great, thank you. Are there others who wanted to chime in on the sort of, portfolio or resume building tools that we could give our students?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that, but I also would stress that it's also a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from our students as well, because they can guide and shape the way that we think about engagement in the future. So it's really putting, I think as an administrator and as a faculty member, it's really putting me to task to deliver the same type of content and a similar experience through a digital format. And I think that's a very valuable experience for the field as we move forward.
And Jamaal, someone did ask a question. Jennifer Streb asked if you could speak a little more about Omeka and what that looks like.
So I've been getting real-time information from our library because I know that they use it. And it's really an exhibition. It's a free online exhibition software. So it's a website that's kind of drag and drop. So we can take cell phone video or images from our database or from our students, and then we can kind of populate content. And for us, we can feed that, we can nest that into our website at Fisk. The same thing with, I know that Alexandria had a security issue with Squarespace. We came in, we had a similar issue, but they were able to nest Squarespace within Fisk's website. So we ended up getting approval for that.
Got it, thank you. I've got a couple questions about students and the issue around equity and access. So one question that came up quite frequently was, how much should we be expecting from our students right now, given these sort of extraordinary circumstances that we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that a little bit. I know my biggest struggle in all of this has not been in making the students feel like we're going to get through this okay. It's been in reminding the faculty that we've got to let go of some expectations that we usually hold on to so dearly. Right. And we've got to understand that there can be power and education found in this time, because surely this is not the first time in their lives that they're going to have to face something like this, that your whole world moves to virtual reality and you've got to find a way to work through it. And I think it's more important for us to recognize that, hey, we can figure this out together, and whatever we figure out through this can be a deep learning capacity for not just us as faculty and administrative staff, but more so for these students. Like, they can learn so much in this capacity, and it's more about, instead of focusing on finishing that painting that was supposed to be finished by May 1st, it's about, okay, how do I make my work digital in some capacity that others out in this world can learn from what we're all going through. I know that's been my biggest focus, is just turning what I thought our methods were, or our goals for the semester were going to be, into new goals, and releasing the reliance on those old goals and focusing on new ones. Like, okay, we're not going to learn that anymore this semester. We're going to learn this instead, because this is also powerful and meaningful.
And somewhat, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also a great opportunity for the students to sort of grapple with what their lives are going to be like when they graduate and they are independent and on their own. In other words, they're in exactly the position they're going to be June 16th, the day after graduation, which is, I'm on my own. I have to create something with the tools and the money and with the resources that I have in front of me. What can I do? How do I do that? So it's really a way to kickstart their own sense and their own vision of their own practice. And I think that's a really exciting thing. And the more that we can begin to communicate that in the process of this educational exchange moment we're all in, I think the better it's going to be, and the more enabled and enlightened they're going to be, and the more engaged they're going to be. That's it.
Well, and somewhat connected to that question, this came up quite a bit in our survey, but what sorts of considerations are we giving to students who maybe don't have easy access to supplies, materials, broadband access, which is something that Alexandra alluded to earlier? Are your museums or your institutions approaching that a little differently? Or are you finding that the resource base, at least for your student population, seems pretty equitable?
Yeah, I think we're very lucky at Stanford because they were proactive, and it's my understanding that they reached out to the students who were in need and who didn't have necessarily those resources, and started offering to loan them computers and other equipment so that they could take them with them before they left campus. We were also had the disadvantage, the advantage that the class that we had to exit in the middle of the quarter, essentially. So they still had access to a lot of the teachers, a lot of the equipment right before they were sent home. So I think that's an advantage that might not be the case in other parts of the country where this hit a little later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely don't have that here at Indiana State. A lot of students are still, we had to leave so quickly that they didn't even get their stuff out of their studios. So we still have work sitting undone in studio spaces that was meant to be showcased in their senior exhibition that they can't even get back to now. And I think a lot of that has come because every day we received new directives. So on Tuesday, we thought we'd be able to at least access studio space for the rest of the semester. And then on Wednesday, we're told, oh, never mind, you don't get access to any of that anymore. And I don't think that that's to the fault of any one person in particular by any means. It's just the times that we're in and what we're facing and what our admin structures are facing, where their directives are being changed every day. So then our directives are being changed every day. I know the way that we're kind of working with it. I don't want to say combating it because I don't think it's a combat situation. It's more a collaborative situation. For me, it's about reminding faculty that, hey, some of the work you might be seeing from these students who are set to graduate for their exhibit this semester is from maybe a year ago. It's not from this semester, and it's because they didn't have access to actually finishing their work. And thankfully I'm getting good responses from that. Everybody seems really understanding that we get it. We understand that that may be the case. We also have students who they don't have internet access. They can't even send me a photograph of their work that's sitting in their house. So we've got to find some other way for them to communicate their senior exhibition content to us in a different format that I haven't quite figured that out yet. And I know I'm lucky because I have 20 students who are graduating. That's a manageable number that I can get on the phone with each and every one of them and figure out exactly what they need in order to send me some kind of content for a digital display. But other institutions where I saw somebody said they're working with over 400 students, like that's not a possibility then.
Right.
Yeah.
I've had several questions come in both through chat and the Q&A function where folks are asking, are we planning exhibitions, or are any of you planning exhibitions of physical work once buildings reopen, or maybe even in the fall semester? Or is this considered, you know, kind of the stopgap for most likely seniors, I'm guessing, going forward?
So I want to take a stab at that. For the short answer is we're not sure. But what we're planning to do at Fisk, and what I mean by not sure, if our seniors allow us to keep their work, we will install the show in our Aaron Douglas Gallery in September. That's our contingency plan right now. But as Alexandria has stated several times, that things are changing every day. So we don't know. And then I just want to go back to that last question, talking about our students. So I teach a sculpture class, and it's like, how do you teach a sculpture class online? I don't know the answer to that either. We're learning as we go. And so what I would leave with is that we have to be agile. And so I make it a point to communicate with all my students in whatever platform that they're available to and with, and make myself as accessible as possible. We use Canvas as an institution, but if students don't have Wi-Fi or internet or access to internet, then they have to call me. And so we're really just trying to figure that out, how to keep our students engaged. But I just wanted to put that out there just for a second.
Connected to the physical exhibitions are, of course, receptions, and that tends to be a big part of what we do. Are any of you planning or considering a virtual reception in some capacity? Kristen Rudy asked this question.
That's a great idea.
We don't know either. We know that we're going to do some kind of graduation for our seniors. We just don't know in what form that will be. It may be virtual, or it could be anything right now. I know that we're all looking at that same question, but we definitely want to celebrate our graduating class. They've earned it and they deserve it. And we're looking hard to find a way to do it.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that yet until this conversation really in this webinar. And I would really love to, but I know one of the roadblocks I'm going to hit is knowing full well that many of our students may not have access to attending a type of virtual reception. And so that would be one of my stopping points, where I would kind of have to think, like, am I overstepping equity boundaries by offering this opportunity for a virtual reception? Am I somehow shutting off access to some of my students who just simply can't participate in such a thing? And I don't know that I want to bring attention to that, especially given the current circumstances. So that would be some of my thoughts throughout actually thinking through what it means to host and hold a virtual reception of sorts.
Leslie Wright at Grinnell mentioned that they're using a number of hotspots to try to loan out to students who lack internet access. I know we've done that at our institution as well, but we were only able to procure something like 4 or 5 more, Verizon hotspots. So can we serve all students with that? Probably not, but it is an option if your institution is able to look into that. Stacy Boris asks, how will graduating MFA students participate in the postponed MFA exhibit that's now scheduled for fall? And how is Stanford accommodating that?
It's a great question. First of all, it hasn't been finalized yet. This is our thinking at the moment. Essentially, the way we're looking at it now is that they were about 3/4 of the way through the production of their work for the exhibition. So most of it is sitting almost complete in their studios right now. So the idea would be that if they can come back over the summer or at the end of June or whenever this begins to release, and we don't know that yet, then the idea would be that they would come back to their studios and they would finish up, we would bring it to our studios over the summer and store it. And then we would install it. Now there are a couple of the graduating MFAs who are going to be teaching in the fall, and they can be there to install their work with us. And otherwise, we'll do it. And then we'll invite them back for the receptions, and we're looking to see what that would look like. But it is a great question.
This is another one for you, Gabriel. Who did your initial SketchUp floor plan, and how did you get that? How can someone else get that started if they've not done that yet?
The initial SketchUp floor plan, gosh, I don't even remember now. They're actually fairly simple to make, because if you have a floor plan, you can literally, through the SketchUp in about an hour, raise up the walls. And if you do that, and your floor plan is actually from a physical drawing that's a measured drawing, then all of the dimensions will be accurate. And then you just have to know your ceiling height, and you just raise it up, and then you have a physical space and you can begin. So that's what I would suggest as a starting point. As long as you can get a hold of a floor plan from your facilities person or whoever has it, you can start and off to the races in about an hour.
Yeah, I've not used Google SketchUp, but I have used, there's a web-based program called Floor Planner, and it's really designed more for interior design. But I have used it personally, both to reconfigure collection storage spaces. And so you work in kind of a 2D top-down mode, but it can render 3D shots of rooms and views and so forth. So there are a lot of different tools out there to explore, and you could consider everything from something like Floor Planner all the way up to SketchUp, which is more like a Bryce 3D or some of those other rendering programs out there.
The beauty of SketchUp is that it's essentially a free program. And
Mhm.
so anyone
Right.
can have access to it. And that also includes the students who would then be working with us in the construction of their models and things.
As you, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
But with SketchUp, does it, can you link it on your website and like visitors can access it, whatever you created?
Yeah, so here's what we've come to so far. So what we could do is we could essentially, using Zoom, as I was doing before, I could move things around with them, and then we decide on the layout.
Okay.
And then at that point, I can take that model and I can make a version that is just simply locked that only I have access to.
Okay.
I load that onto the website with a viewer. It's a free downloadable viewer that connects to it. And then anybody can click on it, download the viewer, and then take a virtual tour without touching anything. And that's the beauty of it.
Okay.
Connected to 3D exhibits, and then I'm going to transition to print in a second here, but many people have commented that maybe we need to think too about some sort of archive or way to save some of the digital materials that will be created. Have any of you developed, an effort or a policy for what you will save, what will sort of go into records as part of this graduating classes show?
I know we were just talking yesterday, I was talking with the person who runs our website, or the person who does our events and publicity. And she said that she's going to be actively trying to archive what comes out going forward for this. And I think that's a great plus. And I think there are ways on a lot of existing websites just to archive them so that there are links to them and they stay live. And this is going to be a very interesting period in everyone's life. So it'd be good to have access to it.
Yeah, and probably connected to that, thinking about if you use tools like SketchUp, for example, or another program that maybe creates file formats that aren't necessarily universal or may not be universal, might want to give consideration to maybe saving, some of the output in different formats. So having JPEGs, having different types of file formats, so that material could still be viable in, say, 10 or 20 years.
Exactly. And it's as simple as even taking a screenshot of a particular view that you like, and then it's there forever.
Yeah. Another question which is related to all of this is the print piece. So catalogs, postcards, all that exhibit collateral that we typically produce to celebrate graduating seniors or student shows. Are any of you still planning to do those print pieces, or are you just shifting to digital, or doing both?
Well, so I had already produced all of those for our exhibit. They're all moot now. They make no sense and don't offer anything. The good thing is that I hadn't snail mailed out the show cards for the BFA BA show. I had already mailed out the show cards for a retirement exhibition of our photography professor, but that's no longer helpful. But I'm also under a no ordering policy right with Indiana State, so I'm not supposed to be ordering anything because there's nobody in our offices to actually receive any packages. That being said, between those two things, I'm not creating any new content, print content for this exhibit. I'm just trying to get images and written content from my students and get them online as quickly as I can. And that's kind of where my focus is, just because I'm essentially a 1.5 man team that's got to figure this all out somehow as quickly as possible. So I'm not producing any new written or print materials.
We typically do for the senior show, and I think they're still going to produce a digital document, and how that gets distributed or printed is TBD, because they're going to be producing some kind of digital output, and whatever that is, we'll be able to capture.
I've got just a few more questions here, and then I think we're going to wrap up as we're approaching 4 o'clock here. But one question here, if I can find it as I scroll through this list. There was a question earlier about, here it is, about Omeka. It seems difficult to work with, especially for people working remotely with Macs. Jamaal, can you maybe speak a little bit to that?
So that I really can't speak to because I'm in the process of learning it right now as we speak as well. So maybe in a couple of days I could follow back up with you and give you some answers.
Sure.
Yeah, but I can't. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, sure. And then this is a broader question here, but somebody asked, what's happening on your campuses with students in other arts-based disciplines like music and performing arts? Are those disciplines also exploring online platforms?
I can't really speak to that, but I know that everyone's having the same conversations about what to do virtually, what they can do at home. I don't know specifically what's going on, but I know just from my colleagues that everyone is having exactly the same conversations.
Yeah, same here. I don't work directly with any of the faculty or staff in those departments. They're wholly separate from art and design for us. But I do know that they are having very similar conversations, especially in the theater department. And I don't think anybody has any solid answers right now, unfortunately.
I've had a few conversations with our music faculty, and a part of the requirement for graduation, our students, their music majors must perform and do a recital. That's their capstone project. And so the last thing that I heard is that they are exploring doing those recitals on Instagram Live or Facebook Live. But they have not happened yet, but I think that they're all working to figure that out.
Well, I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. First of all, thank all of our panelists. So thank you for volunteering your time and sharing your insight and expertise with all of us. And thank you to all of our participants who came out today. I know we had well over 300 who attended, so thank you for showing up, being part of our community. We'll have more information on the annual conference soon, so just stay tuned. When you close out a Zoom, there is a brief, and I promise it's brief, I made it. It's 5 questions, SurveyMonkey survey that's going to ask you about the quality of our presentation today, what we can do better in the future. If you could fill that out, that would really help us as we explore more of these platforms in the future. So with that, I don't know if panelists want to say goodbye and thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And we'll keep an eye out. We'll have more webinars coming soon.